Hello and welcome to the third video in the Disney World solo trip series. Today we are going to discuss solo trip Disney World costs. If you're interested in other videos about my geek culture adventures across reading, watching, playing and travelling, then don't hesitate to like this video and subscribe. Certainly consider posting a comment because replying to comments and communicating with those who watch these videos is what makes the whole thing worthwhile. So you've decided to go or are thinking about a Disney World solo trip. This may even be because you've watched the first two videos in this series. So now we're going to look at some of the practicalities of solo Disney World trip costs. I guess the obvious question is, will a solo Disney World trip cost me more? In truth, that depends, but probably yes. Solo Disney World trip costs depend on two main principles and factors. Whether your solo Disney World trip will cost you more depends on the profile of your trip before, mainly how many contributing incomes there was to your trip, because now there'll only be one. And on the other side of the fence is the fact that some costs are fixed and don't change even though you're now a solo traveller, and some costs are per person, so therefore they scale. In order to look at this, we can look at three examples of how you might have undertaken your Disney World trip before you considered travelling solo. Example number one is a family of four on a single income. Example number two is three mates travelling together, all of which have an income and pay their part. And then, probably because it's a common occurrence, a couple living together with a combined income. These three examples should allow you to mix and match them in order to get whatever variation applied to you. So in order to answer whether it will cost you more or not, it often comes down to the big ticket items, and those big ticket items are flights and costs. So we will go through those first. They also serve as perfect examples of a big ticket fixed cost item and a big ticket per person cost item. Let's consider flights first, because flights are nice and simple. They're nice and simple because they are a per person cost, so therefore they scale up and scale down with the number of people going on the holiday. The biggest winner when it comes to flights is the family of four with a sole income. Because as a family of four, if they're travelling from the UK, they'll be paying £400 to £600 per ticket, and they need 4 tickets. The solo traveller from that family obviously only needs 1 plane ticket, so suddenly that singular income is only paying £400 to £600 for their flights. It makes absolutely no difference to the person travelling with his 2 other mates because he only ever paid for his own plane ticket anyway. While the internal finances of a couple with a combined income can sometimes be a bit complex, it is probably safe to say that that combined income is now only paying for 1 plane ticket rather than 2. So as you can see, plane tickets scale up and down, so depending on your profile of travelling on holiday before, you can make quite serious savings on your plane tickets or find that it's just a zero-sum game. Now let's consider accommodation costs. There is a reason you'll come to hate accommodation costs on your Disney World solo trip, and that is because they're a fixed cost. By and large, it doesn't really matter if there's 1 person in that room or 4, you're paying exactly the same day rate. This means that sole income in that family of 4, the hotel bill doesn't go down at all. It will stay exactly the same. Similarly, the person travelling with his 2 other mates was at one point paying 1/3 of a hotel bill. They will now be paying the full hotel bill. It even affects the couple with the combined income, because that combined income will have to pay the same hotel bill even though only one of them is going on the holiday. You really will come to dislike the accommodation cost part of your solo Disney World trip. Generally, unless you're buying a lot less plane tickets, your money just isn't going to go as far across flights and accommodation, and that is primarily because of the fixed accommodation cost. As a general example, if I was to fly to Disney World from the UK and stay in a value resort with a partner, it would cost me around 2k. My solo Disney World trip in 2016 cost me around 1.4 to 1.5k, and that is primarily because I was paying the fixed cost of the accommodation. On that basis, what you'll find that one of your first decisions is when considering a solo Disney World trip is to what degree you compromise on the hotel. Whether that's from luxury to moderate or moderate to value, or from staying on property to staying off property, that fixed cost will cause you to reconsider what you would normally do. We can also consider other costs of the holiday, like food. Food, in many ways, is exactly like flights. It's just each dinner doesn't cost as much as a plane ticket, and that's because it's a per person cost. So again, the person who's going to make the most savings on their Disney World solo trip is that family of 4 on a single income, because each time that solo traveller goes out for a meal, he ain't paying for 4. The individual going with his 2 other mates isn't probably going to really see that much difference, because he probably only paid for his own meal anyway. Depending on how they internally organise their finances, the couple with a combined income are also going to save money, because they're only paying for 1 meal again rather than 2 per sitting. We can also consider the costs of getting around Florida. In many ways, travelling around Florida is very similar to hotels in that they're a fixed cost, just not as high. If we look at Uber, which is the way a lot of people do it these days, your Uber cost is the same no matter how many people get in that car. So the main thing to consider about travel costs around Florida is all the costs are yours to pay. If I was to use the example of my trip in 2017, we used Uber quite a bit, but every Uber bill was halved with Jack. If I was to do it exactly the same but as a solo traveller, obviously my Uber bill effectively doubles. Renting a car depends on how you've paid for it. If the rental of the car is sort of hidden in the holiday cost, well then it's hard to divide up and notice how it's attributed. If you've rented a car separately, well it suffers the same problem as any other fixed cost. You're going to pay a day rate for that rental car no matter how many people's incomes are contributing to its cost. So when undertaking a solo Disney World trip, it's a bit like any holiday, and how much it costs depends on how much you really want to spend. At the same time, there are a couple of restrictions you're under, and those are the fixed cost items. The primary fixed cost item being your hotel. That 14-day Cabana Bay Universal is going to cost you exactly the same amount of money, no matter how many people can divide up the bill. So in summary, that's the best way to think about it. Watch out for the fixed cost, especially the big ticket items, because you're suddenly going to find you're paying for all those yourself. Keep an eye on the per person costs in a slightly different way, because they will quite happily scale up and down to your solo status, so then it becomes more just exactly what you want to spend your money on and how much you want to spend. But one of the main decisions you will probably make on your solo Disney World trip is to what degree you downgrade your hotel expectations. Or you just go for it and blow the lot. If you're considering a solo trip or you're going on one soon, what were your decisions around that massive fixed cost of the hotel bill? Did you just go for it? Did you decide to downgrade your expectations or make different choices in order to absorb the cost? I'd be interested to know. Thank you for listening. Please consider liking and subscribing. Certainly post a comment, because responding to comments is what makes this all worthwhile. Until next time.